Michelle, welcome to the podcast. Michelle Gomes is the co-founder and CEO of Evaheld, an Australian company where health tech meets death tech. Evaheld transforms how people and organizations preserve stories, values, and advance care wishes through its legacy vault and memorial platform. Evaheld bridges innovation and humanity, helping families protect what matters most, while enabling care providers and insurers to meet new standards with empathy, compliance, and digital foresight. First and foremost, Michelle, how did you get started in this industry? And because seems like certain nuances of what I've just read in your bio seem fairly original, and I wonder how you came up with this company and the specific idea of preserving stories.
Really good question. It's probably due to my very unconventional background. So I studied very traditional things, so finance and law, but I actually started building businesses quite young. I haven't had a boss since I was 19. This is actually venture number 5 for me. And I always did things, I always focused on businesses and ventures that meant something, but none of them kind of at the scale of Everheld. And it was the death of a close friend nearly 10 years ago. Um, that really was the catalyst. So she left behind 2 little boys, aged 5 and 7, and it was a horrific time. And the best that she could do at the time was write letters so that they would know her story in her own words and have words of advice for the future. And there was no accessible service at the time. This kind of led to me volunteering this service to people initially at end of life for nearly a decade. So weekends, nights, you name it. I was there helping people create this content. And then during COVID, I was unable to access somebody who was in an aged care home. They passed away on their own, and their
Mm.
family history, their story, everything was lost. And I think it was the very next week we started bootstrapping and built the first iteration of Everheld.
Beautiful. Absolutely. It's inspiring what you're doing because we really don't realize the value of certain things until way later. And I know this seems like an unfair comparison, but one that's somewhat relatable to me. When I was in high school, I had a friend who was like kind of annoying. He took photos of everything. And we were just like, just enjoy the day. Stop like documenting everything. And, 20 years later, 15 years later, this guy has a treasure trove of memories. And his ability to foresee that at that age, honestly, is inspiring, is humbling, and it's amazing because, like, you don't realize how quick life is and how fast it goes.
Yeah.
Preserving moments is one of the things that we all wish we did. When it's you never know it's the good old days when you're in them, kind of thing.
Abs-
And and I think what you're doing is extremely beautiful. How do you go about preserving memories? Just out of curiosity. We're taking a bit of a unique direction here, but with the advancement of AI, there's becoming really unique ways to bring old memories back to life. There's coming very interesting ways of preserving information, and I think we're going to be able to do a lot more with the information tomorrow than we can today. And, it's something where like maybe in 30, 40, 50 years from now, we're going to wish we had certain bits of data because we would have been able to we might be able to do some really interesting things with that data. So just out of curiosity, do you guys try to find more creative ways to preserve stories, or is it just a very static way of just like recording or video editing or videotaping and whatnot?
Great story, Michael. So um, I'll answer that from a human psychology perspective. People are petrified of death, and getting them to just record their story, whether that's written, video, or audio, as you say, static, is hard enough as it is. So the last thing that we would do at Everheld is try and bring AI into that process in terms of start thinking about AI avatars that's going to speak to their future generations for 500 years, or VR or anything like that. We're at the crux of we're kind of at a fork in the road in a booming industry, which is digital memorialization. And what
Mm,
we're trying to do is establish trust. And the way to establish trust is to capture people's stories as they are now. And the way that we use AI to help right now is to make it really easy for people to do this, because it's actually quite a difficult and strenuous task to, get all these memories organized. So AI right now is streamlining the process for people, making it easy for families, organizing content and all the rest of it. This also means it's forming the base, as you said, of future possibilities. So in 10 years' time, Everheld will be able to say, sure, someone can create an AI avatar on the information that's available from you online or the information that your family gives it, et cetera. But with Everheld, you have personally curated all of the content in your account, and your AI avatar with Everheld is only going to have the content that you've put in there. So I definitely think that when it comes to our most precious content, which is literally what we're dealing with, like our stories and our impact is more important than anything else in the world, especially after we're gone. There's nothing of more value
Right.
to our loved ones. So I think this is the beginning of a really interesting journey, and everything has its part to play in the journey. So while at Everheld we have all of that on our mind, trust me, Michael, we're thinking about all the incredible things we'll be able to do in
Right.
the future with it. For now, our main focus is how do we just use AI to get people to actually do this? Take this
Mm,
seriously, get it done today, not kind of everyone has the same attitude to this, and that's a wonderful thing for us. It's definitely see the value, definitely want to do it, but it seems like a tomorrow task. So our
right.
job right now is making it a today task. Yeah.
Understood. I'm thinking what you're doing now almost seems like common sense and obvious, but it does have a counterintuitive feel to it. And I wonder why. And I feel like this might be because for generations and generations, we had very limited ability to pass on our memories to our children. Maybe it'd be through stories or through making, living in the minds of others is a very difficult task. You'd have to do something monumental, something like Albert Einstein. He's done something monumental, and it's why he lives in all of our heads today. Do you know anything about Albert Einstein's neighbor? Not really, right? And I think we're living in a world now where, even my own great great grandfather, I know nothing about him. I have no idea what he looks like. I have no idea what his name is. I have no idea where he lived. Um, and that's changed. And the reason why perhaps we don't do a whole lot more of this is because tradition and values are passed on through generations. And I feel like our ancestors never had the ability to do this. And
Yeah.
now that it's all of a sudden this explosion of opportunity, it's almost like we're looking right in front of an extremely obvious decision to preserve memories and pass it on to generations. But very few people are doing it. And wouldn't it be amazing for our great, great, great grandkids to know exactly who we are, how we spoke, how we thought, what we cared about? And I think that this is the time to worry about that.
Yeah, well, you've just literally explained the purpose of Everheld. Um, Everheld is about the democratization of legacy. Usually, it's famous historical figures who had money or power, who literally have a legacy that still lives today. The future is very, very different with Everheld. Every single one of us is going to be able to memorialize our legacy into the future. Um, So exactly what you said, I think that's been the biggest change in what we're seeing. What's incredible and what we need to do now and what is kind of our obligation is that we do get the elders in our families and in our groups and in our loved ones to be able to tell us as far back as they can, because the only way there will be anything at all about, great grandfathers or great great grandfathers is from your dad today. So essentially, once you pass this on to your children, you're talking about giving a knowledge hub that already covers 3 to 4 generations in once, and we've never had that. I mean, this eventually, my vision is eventually Everheld is gonna be one of the biggest, um, libraries of legacies in the
Mm,
entire world, personal libraries of legacies. And that's, that's just something that's totally amazing. It's no longer about who was rich or powerful, and that also means that a lot of the legacies that are preserved are legacies of people of a certain class. And I think this removes all of those kind of
right,
barriers.
right. And I know this sounds crazy, but I think the data we're collecting, we don't really have a true understanding of what the value is. I think, it can be compared or akin to, you know, preserving stem cells once you're born. And then you might need those, 50, 60, 70 years later. We're starting to understand that, but we still don't really understand the implications of that. And this sounds almost like complete crazy talk or fantastical, but with maybe just a few bits of data and maybe just, a draw of blood or a swab of saliva, we can recreate a person, or we can with just a few words and a few memories and just we can recreate things that almost seem impossible today. So passing on that information is absolutely. Just it really does sound fascinating to me because I think data is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And, just like we didn't realize what we can do with just a draw of blood, 50, 60 years ago, I think it's the same idea of what you're doing. Um, where do you see the company in 10 to 15 years, both in terms of like your own company and the advancement of the industry as a whole?
I think we're on the precipice of something huge. Everheld is a first mover. There is no other comprehensive legacy preservation platform in the world, um, and and I cover the entire world there. We have users in the US, UK, Canada, and other non-English speaking countries. I see Everheld in 10, 15 years as the biggest player in this space around the world, and that's definitely our goal. And of course, when that happens, people follow, right? So I'm sure there's going to be lots of players doing lots of wonderful um, things in the space. Um, but for now, we're just kind of focused on what we're doing and how we can help people, and just
Mm.
being as tuned in, as intuitive as we can be to what our users want.
How do you get people to open up to this process? Because I imagine uh, some people might be a little hesitant to do so, even if they agree with what you're saying verbally.
Absolutely, Michael. That's the marketing challenge, right? As I said before, everyone thinks it's a great idea. It's a lot harder to do. I think having done this for so many years in person, um, there is definitely a process, and this is why the Everheld Legacy Vault, telling you all my secrets now, includes everything that it does, because everybody knows they're going to come and do the essentials, like keep their financials and legal documents safe, and then they're going to move on to advanced care planning for their care and health wishes. And then, because it's there and because they trust the process, they're gonna go into story and legacy. And story and legacy is always going to begin with things that seem impersonal and people are kind of neutral about. So starting with family stories, family tree, activities like that. And eventually it just snowballs, because the more you do, the more important you feel it is that you start creating messages for grandkids to receive in the future in 40 years' time. You start
Mm.
writing a memoir. You start kind of, penning a legacy letter. So it's definitely a process for people. And we see it, for us, it's data, and we see the same kind of patterns emerge um, on and on. It's also, so that's the first part of how we see our users behave. But the second part is that Everheld is a Gen Z values company, and I say that all the time. If I speak to someone, like my parents took a year to even understand what the hell it is that I do.
Mm.
They're in their 70s, right? But if I speak to a Gen Z, they get it straight away. I say legacy preservation, like, yeah, like record people's stories and stuff. Yeah, like it's immediate. And the future of Everheld is being driven by that group. It's been driven by Gen Zs, even up to millennials who are going to read, who are going to sign on, send a request to their grandparents and parents and say, hey, I've just made a family legacy vault. I want you to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 templates into it. So
Mm.
it's actually it's a product where it's super important to capture all the information um, immediately of baby boomers, but it's not being driven by baby boomers, and I think there's something really special in that, because
Mm.
even the concept and the essence of Everheld is connection through and through. Like that's what it is. It's enabling human connection in ways never possible before, and it's just beautiful. Like even I pinch myself that I'm lucky enough to run this company.
What kind of information does Everheld store in their bins?
uh, I'm not going to answer that, but I will say we're we're very very careful about how we store information, and we're very careful about how we dispose of information, and more importantly, we're uber careful about how we deliver information. So
Right.
we've had bad situations in the past. One in particular, um, where someone sent content um, that someone didn't want to receive, and it was horrific. So we do a lot around. So our biggest focus isn't actually in the bins, but it's in vetting recipients to make sure that
Right.
they know the person sending content and they actually want to receive content from this person.
Right. Okay, but so let me know if I'm pushing too far here, but w- like what kind of information? So is it like movies? Is it like clips? Is it audio? And I guess it would be
People's
anything that someone
people
wants to send you.
deepest
But
people deepest, darkest secrets, the kind of stuff that people take to the grave. So I get
mm,
I've had things I don't know all about on Everheld, everything's encrypted, right? So when I speak about this is my experience in person. Like I've had a dude acknowledge a love child that he never acknowledged while they were alive. And I've had that same woman just say, fuck him. So excuse my there. Um,
that's
I've had
crazy.
yeah, I've had one gentleman, he was an abuser and I sat with him and I got his entire story. I got everything. And this gentleman, it's funny, um, wolves in sheep's clothing. It sounded like it was a daughter that he had abandoned when she was younger, right? That was
Mm,
horrific. That was horrific when I gave it to her and I realized who he was and what he had done to her. So
wow.
I can speak to what I've done in person. Um, but in terms of the content online, I have no, all we know is, as I said before, we know the journey because we know which section of the vault they're in and we know the templates they're completing, right? But we don't know any of the data.
Right. I imagine that's like the rawest, truest form of a person. Like reading any of that material will tell you you'll know that person better than people who've lived with them for 100 years.
Yeah.
That's just really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Again, I want to know if I'm pushing this too far, but what was the most, I know you're not privy to information that goes through, as you mentioned, it's encrypted. But I am curious, was there anything in particular that really blew your mind that someone wanted to preserve, that you were aware of and that you're allowed to share with me?
Um, Not really. Maybe that's because I've heard a lot of stuff and so nothing kind of surprises me anymore. Um, I think initially we had templates about preserving your story and family history, etc. I think a big moment for me was one lady who's a well-known advocate in Australia, humanitarian advocate, and I did her like all of her interviews and all of her videos when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she literally made videos for her grandkids to get on every birthday for the next 20 years. She did videos for unborn grandchildren. She literally dressed
Wow.
Yeah, she literally dressed up as she would when she was reading, her son's bedtime stories and I filmed her, wearing the costumes and reading the bedtime stories so her unborn grandchildren, who she was afraid she'd never meet, um, they'd actually be able to play it for her, like Nanny reading you the same bedtime stories she read to me when I was your age.
That's
She just
incredibly sad just to hear.
It is sad.
That's makes the hair on your skin rise. I mean, that's because imagine like some grandkid watching that like 30 years later and it's like, hey, I have this like parasocial, this like one-sided relationship with this individual, which is honestly fascinating.
It is, isn't it? And also and this is bringing back AI from your question before. How much more powerful is that and knowing that was actually that person, their mannerisms, their speaking? It's not,
Right,
AI deciding what that person was like, even if
right.
that's 99.9% accuracy. You just know that grandma literally thought to do this for me and she did
Mm,
it. It's next level. It's
yeah,
it's just next level.
yeah. You're in the business of creating incredibly beautiful relationships across generations. I think that's one of the things you do. Uh, what advice would you give to someone unsure whether they should do this or not?
Just start with anything. Start with something. um
Because there's an element of mortality that you're forced to face as a precursor to taking this process on, where like we intrinsically live our life avoiding death. It's why we constantly distract ourselves with superficial pleasures. It's why we're always looking for the next car and shopping and the new purse and the new shoes. And, it's why we're constantly distracting ourselves. We're looking for immediate gratification. Ultimately, when you dig deep enough into your subconscious, we're designed to avoid death and to avoid the concept and conversation discomfort that comes with death. And I feel like one of the biggest hurdles to your service is you have to come to grips that you're going to die, because this is, in essence, a preparation for that. And I think that, to me, sounds like the biggest hurdle to
Yeah.
cross.
So, Michael, from a linear perspective, yes, that this is why I said before that those people are not our market. The market is Gen Zs. The market is that are approaching it as, nah, no more excuses, grandma, mum and dad. We're going to sit here. There's a template. Takes 10 minutes to
Mm.
complete. Where were you born? Where
They're the
did,
secret pushers of
yeah,
the
where
of
did,
the.
yeah,
Yeah.
where were you born? Where did you meet mum? What did you first think the first time you saw mum? When did you get married?
Mm,
Where was it? How was it? This is the key. Um, the stuff around society and taboos around death that's slowly changing, it's always going to be there. In fact, this content is the hardest to make if someone is in end of life. And the people that I do that with in person, they're very specific people that actually want to do it right. They're
mm,
asking for me. It's not the other way around, right? So this is about how do we change this person? How do we actually say, actually, this Christmas I got you this, grandpa and grandma, because I just love you and I want to have the stories you used to tell me when I was younger forever. We're the ones that have to change our conversations around this. We're the ones that have to shift our values around this. And ultimately, the younger generations also have to kind of stop thinking about themselves so much and their own mortality and just think, do you want to preserve these guys or not? Do you want to get this stuff down or not? That's
mm.
at the end of the day, that's all there is to it. I mean, that's how I look at it, and I know how tough it is.
Yeah. Do some people see it? Can some people potentially see this process as more of a confession on some of the things that have been holding them down in life, where it's like they don't
Cathartic.
want to take some of their secrets to the grave? And because there is an element of liberation where, like,
Yeah.
maybe there's something that they're holding on to their whole life, and the reason why they're scared to open up is maybe retribution or problems that might come, but once
Yeah.
they're dead. And like that's like that opportunity for them to preserve certain memories and
Mm.
or certain confessions. I know I'm just thinking out loud here, but I feel like
Absolutely.
this tool can be used in extremely unique ways.
You're 100% right, and I think that in a lot of ways it has been used for that reason. And as the stories I told you before, often that might be fantastic for the person that's getting something off their chest, but it's detrimental to others. So
Right.
it's a super interesting area. You're completely right. We hope um, we hope that in the most part, and from experience in person, in the most part, it's people finally saying what they're unable to say to people. So they'll sit there and say, "I
Mm,
just want to know how much I've never been able to say I love you, and I love you so much, and I needed you to hear it."
mm.
And after the interviews, I'll always say, "That's so amazing that you did that." But you should really think about saying that in person because you can do it. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so many times I've had people turn around and say, you know what? I think I can. They're like, that was so interesting just saying it out loud for the first time and being okay about it. And if that's what it takes for that real
That's so
human,
backwards. That's like
yeah,
therapeutic.
but we are back,
That's
we're
You're
backwards.
preparing for death, but it's therapeutic for making
Yeah,
healthier decisions during life.
yeah,
I
we
absolutely
are backwards.
love this angle.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
absolutely backwards. So that happens all the time. That's one of the things that I learned. Um, very early on. Once they say it to me, it is 99% times easier to say it again because I've also affirmed it for them, right?
Right.
I've said that is, I'm like, you need, is this person still alive? Yes. You need to tell them because this is life changing. And some people that can't do it, at least it's better that usually it's one of their children, is going to get some kind of peace and closure and healing, after the fact. So you just can't lose from it. You just cannot lose from it.
This has been a fascinating conversation. And this idea, just your business model can just create so many unique and beautiful opportunities. Uh, I'm really curious to know, like, I'm really curious to know in what If you can one day share with me all the crazy and amazing ways this company has been used to better people's lives, I'd be, fascinated to hear it because, some things people spend their whole life and they just can't do it. Even just a sentence, even just a few words.
Yeah.
And to know what people really and like what people are willing to say, it's like all the ego's gone, right? Like deep down, someone fought with a sibling their entire life and they just leave a message saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I fought with you my whole life. I really cared about you, this and that."
Yeah.
And locking that in a box is something that, is really fascinating. How can people get in touch with you, Michelle?
Evaheld.com.
That's simple.
Yeah,
So
they
it's
can
EVA, right?
Evaheld. So we just combined forever and held.
Thank you for your time, Michelle. It's been a
Thank
great
you.
conversation.
And please, Michael, sign up. Our free vault has 5 pieces of content. You can send requests and add people to it, as many as you like,
Mm,
and give it a go.
brilliant idea. I absolutely love your model. Thank you for your time, Michelle.
Thank you, Michael. Nice to meet you.